cut all the overtime for bus operators, all the overtime for mechanics. And what does that mean? The buses that are behind us are just sitting there.
Join my page and you'll see every single day there are riders who are waiting 45 minutes, an hour for a bus. Buses are bypassing them because they're full. They're buses with no air conditioning. Lots of passengers complaining about that.
They got stuck in the tunnel in massive traffic with no air conditioning. One of the passengers almost passed out. The bus driver had to actually take the top off of the bus to get air into the bus, to get air circulating.
It stinks.
When everything breaks at the seams, and you feel like you're losing belief. Well, damn it, you just gotta stay strong. When it all falls apart and goes wrong, when you feel let down and so lost, and it feels like you can't hold on. Well, damn it, you just gotta stay strong. 'Cause sometimes things go wrong, and one day everything's gone, but you can make it out and move on. So damn it, you just gotta stay strong.
You know, we've discussed before about congestive pricing and all that, but this story, you know, and I'm slamming the MTA for this. I'm really, truly not the MTA workers. I know I have friends who are, they work for the MTA as drivers. Some of them are union heads that basically handle all the issues on there. There are people that that work for the transit system, whether they work at a booth, work in the subways and stuff like that. And I have a lot of them that are in that job line. And I'll tell you, they have a hard job. Just like the NYPD, they have a hard job to maintain the movement of people back and forth throughout the city of New York. And I'll tell you this, I'll say this, still, New York City is one of the cheapest rides around the U.S. People said, well, it's about $3. I said, yeah, but I can get from Staten Island to the upper end of the Bronx on just one fare. Other places are charging from let's say, if you're going from A to B, it's this price. If you're going from A to C, it's this price, and sometimes you get shelling out up to $11, $12 to get from one place to another. So, you tell me, $3 versus $11, which is the better deal? But I'm going to say this. First off the bat, this has nothing to do with congestive pricing, as the MTA keeps throwing out at everyone. So this had to do with congestive pricing. We can't afford it to the situation. People are being fooled right now. And, they're not being told the truth on a lot of things. And the thing about it is, the mainstream media hasn't caught on it. There are some outlets, New York Post, New York One, and a couple others that have been talking about this. And we have been talking about it here as well. We've been bringing this out. When I was working out here, when I first moved out to Staten Island, and I was working for a retailer out here, I used to work late, used to grab the bus, and when I got out very, very late, they were far in between. And say, for example, one's supposed to arrive at 1:30 in the morning, and it didn't arrive until 2 a.m. And you ask yourself, well, hey, listen, it's delayed, it's late, probably waiting. The excuse was they had to wait for the ferry to get in and all that, and that's why the delay. And, I accept it to that point. Fast forward to 2024. Recently, and this is of most recent, and you can probably tap it back to about 2023. And this is on Staten Island. Can't speak for the other boroughs, but it's probably maybe the same in some of the parts of the other boroughs. On Staten Island, we've had major delays. And we're talking major delays. And we're not talking on the smaller bus lines of the Staten Island bus lines. We're not talking about the ones going to Brooklyn, because there's one bus line, the 54, if I'm not mistaken. Is it the 54 or the 53? From Staten Island, starts out at Staten Island on one end, goes through over the bridge and stops right next to the R train in the last stop in Brooklyn on the R train. So it's one way you can get into the city if the ferry's not working. There's one main line, and I'll bring this up as an example. There is one main line, it's the S48. The S48 starts out on Marinus Harbor. That's all the way down to one end on South Avenue. It starts out right about there, goes straight across, cuts into Victory Boulevard, and goes all the way to the Staten Island Ferry. It's a fairly lengthy route, but at certain times of the day, that 48, she will run good. I mean, we're talking, you'll get to your destination pretty fast when it's running. In the evening period, and I'm not talking past 11 p.m., I'm talking about sundown, like 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock. There have been occasions, and I've talked to certain people that have worked in the area. I have friends still that are working in the places where I used to work, and they've told me that basically you could chart this. If you take a moment, hit the MTA app on your phone. Put it on your phone. Put in for Staten Island, the S whatever, 48, 54, 53, 46. And if you put in the S48 and the evening part, monitor the amount of buses that are going on, and it's very simple, and see if there's not a delay notification. And a lot of times the delay notifications will be about 12 to 13 of the bus lines, 12 or 13, 14. Most of the bus lines on Staten Island are in delay. And they said, well, we're trying to get the buses out where, we don't have enough. And they try to put, at some points they say, we don't have enough drivers to the point, but we'll get everything going. One person told me that they were waiting for the bus about 8:05 p.m., and the bus didn't show up till well over 10:15 p.m. And if you look on the app, it'll say 20 minutes, it'll be there, and no bus number listed, because what is on the app, it'll list the bus number on there if it's running. But on occasions, before it starts running, it'll say 20. It'll give you like a couple listings. It'll give you the next couple of bus lines on there to say 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and so on and so on and so on. What happened was the times kept changing, or it gets scratched out and saying canceled. And it was happening all night. And this is not just one night alone. This is not just something during the summer to the situation. This has been happening on a constant basis. And not only the 48, the 44. The 44 is even a longer route, which is from the Staten Island Mall to the Staten Island Ferry, and that's a good long route. You have the 61, the 62, the 63. As I said before, the 53, the 54. Also, the express buses to that go in and out of Staten Island, which we already know that they're trying to. That MTA have said we're cutting back because of congestive pricing. Now, from what I understand and from what I've heard and what the articles that have been out there, besides of the air conditioning issues and infested with roaches on these buses and smelling like piss and marijuana, the mechanics, their hours have been cut. In other words, no overtime for the mechanics. And here's what the issue comes in. Now, there is one of the places, the Meredith Bus Depot, which is being eliminated very soon, which happens to be one of the better depots of the whole island, of Staten Island itself. So it's well equipped, well done, and they're shutting it down. But what we're hearing is that there are drivers who are sitting around at the depots and no buses to give to them. Because basically there is a backlog of buses needing repair work, including air conditioning, service on there. Meanwhile, the MTA is out there trying to push the congestive, and they're trying to buy new rail cars and these electric buses which is costing them a pretty penny, which there's no guarantee they're going to work properly, because we've heard stories from around the country that cities that have bought these electric buses have had some malfunctions and all that straight off the bat. Even the new trains that came in, they had to do work on them because they had major issues on the new cars that have come out. But we're going to read into this. We're going to read from the Spectrum New York 1. Staten Island officials, transit union, says MTA is not maintaining buses. And the thing about it is, we're going to try to get the video, and if we can, put it up there. We'll see if we can do that. You could see where the drivers are waiting for the buses, waiting for a bus to on there. There isn't any. They're just sitting around getting paid just for sitting around. A waste. And it's not the driver's fault. It's not the driver's fault. It's the MTA's fault. Besides, cars and limited railway buses are the primary means of transportation around Staten Island. Buses are also one of the major ways to commute into Manhattan, which Felipa Grizzali has been doing for 35 years. You could join my page and you'll see every single day riders are waiting 45 minutes to an hour every single day, and even more. Buses are bypassing them because they're full. Grizzali, who runs a Facebook page dedicated to riders, complained, saying buses with no air conditioner. And this was a hot year. The union that represents the MTA workers on Staten Island, Amalgamated Transit Union, says the MTA isn't fixing mechanical issues, leaving operators with no buses to drive. Video obtained exclusively by New York One shows bus operators at the Yukon depot just waiting around. The union says up to 300 buses out of the 800 on the island can sometimes be out of service. 300, ladies and gentlemen, 300 buses out of service. They cut all the overtime for bus operators, all the overtime for mechanics. ATU Local S26 President Dan Cancella said, "What does this mean? The buses are behind us, are just sitting there." Casella says, yet the MTA tell customers something else in their service alerts. Said this before. They try to blame the bus drivers, saying that the bus drivers are not getting in on time, and it's not the bus drivers' fault. We are running as much service as we can with the operators we have available. That's the wording that is put on there, Casella said, reading one of the alerts, then pointing to the picture of his members waiting at the depot. Here, the bus operators are available. It is unclear whether it is related to a memo sent out by former transit President Richard Davey in April, putting up a moratorium on all unbudgeted overtime. See, this goes back to April, ladies and gentlemen. This is before this was the congestive pricing was still going through the courts and stuff like that. It's still, it was practically approved by then. New York City Transit Vice President of Buses, Frank Anacaro, says it's more of a seasonal problem. Certain locations may have issues with equipment. Defects may be greater during certain times. For example, during the heat, hottest summer on record defects surge. Anacaro says we continue to provide robust service to our passengers on 93, 94, 95% service delivery every day. He talks about the day. He ain't talking about the night. Night where it's still humid, but it does cool off a bit. But the quality of service is also at an issue. State Assemblyman Michael Tanos says his sister had a bad experience on an express bus, which doesn't have windows to open. Yeah, if you don't know the windows on an express bus, basically you're stuck out of luck if the air conditioning goes out. They got stuck in a tunnel in a massive traffic with no air conditioning. One of the passengers almost passed out. The bus driver actually had to take off the top of the bus, he said. Conditions also affect operators, including roach infestations. We've heard this before. And the thing about it is here's the one problem with the roach infestation, and I'll tell you this. A lot of people are eating on these buses, and they're leaving their garbage behind, and that just basically ends up in the depot. And problem is, sometimes the garbage is not removed on the last stop, especially if it's the last run of the bus, especially if they're not doing OT on any of this. So the buses don't get cleaned till morning, and what happens is that food is sitting there getting rotted, especially in heat, especially the heat in these depots. You know, I myself rode one day. I was on the S46 going home from work, and this was during the day, one of the days that had an early shift. And basically, people got on board, and they had boxes of chicken wings. And they're sitting there eating the chicken wings and throwing it on the floor. I mean, one person took, and I got to laugh at this. You have to laugh at this. If you ever see on any, then you can see this on any buses. You know, there's always that front end of the bus that flips up for wheelchair access. And there are these little safety belts that are on there. I saw a woman wrap herself in the safety, and she wasn't someone who's in a wheelchair. She wrapped herself in the belt of the wheelchair around the post so she could stand there, not sit because there was no seating, to eat the chicken. I mean, how crazy is that? I mean, it's insane, you know, to that situation. Reading on, one operator took a video of a roach trap on his bus. He spoke to NY1 but didn't want to be identified. My experience is that the job every year, there's always something getting a little worse. It doesn't get better, the operator said. According to the officials, it will get worse as the Meredith Bus Depot is slated to close by the end of the year. It is the only one that says that functions properly. Officials says they worry that adding more buses to the other 3 depots will only cause more problems. Yeah, and that's the story to itself. That is the story itself. The MTA trying to blame congestive pricing and cutbacks in the situation. But meanwhile, this has been going on prior to congestive pricing. The MTA hasn't been running right in a long time. And the thing about it is, they're going out and they said, well, we need to change our fleet. Yeah, okay, change your fleet, but do it properly. You got a lot of great buses on there that work properly. Get them repaired. You can have them running a little bit longer until you're able to transition into a new fleet. And do not, and I'll say this again, stay away from the electric buses. I'll tell you this, you will not do well with these. Remember, these electric buses won't do well in slush and snow or in flooding in itself. Because what happens is, say for example, in a snow situation where there's a little ice, as you're grinding in, the regular engine motors are going to be a little bit stronger, even though you're going to have a problem with it, even though you have the chains and stuff like that. With a battery, it's going to burn a little quicker. It's going to burn a little quicker than fuel. And the thing about it is, even if a regular bus runs out of fuel, a emergency service vehicle can arrive with replacement fuel for that bus. Very simple to that perspective. And some of these buses engines they run a lot cleaner than their original. If you remember the old school buses from way back when, the 70s and 80s, those buses were like, oh my God, literally those were smog buses. They just you always knew when one went by. The new buses that in the latter 90s, 2000s, and present day, they handle a lot better as far as pollution wise. They don't pollute as much as their predecessors did. And they work pretty good. I mean, when they're running, you can't cut back on your workers. And that's the one thing on there. You got to continue. You're a factory. If you have to split up the work, yeah, go ahead, split up the work, to that situation. Whether you hire a couple of more mechanics on the line just to handle what is behind, or just basically spread it out properly. Cutting overtime is not a good thing. These buses need their maintenance. People need to get around. They need I remember there's a point back in my youth, when I used to hang out on Staten Island, when I lived in Manhattan. You had buses from Capodanno, and they stopped running at a certain point, like 8, 9 o'clock. I think 8, 9 o'clock at night. No, now they run a little bit more. they increased the amount of buses on there. And then same thing with all the lines, because you have more people living on Staten Island. And the thing about it is, now you're cutting back on the express buses as well. And that's not good, because a lot of people need to get into the city. The express bus is the fastest way in. You're going to have more and more people complain that, to that point. And here's the thing. You're wondering why you're hearing that basically, the MTA is saying that about 45 to 50% of riders are not paying their fares. Well, could it be because of this? Could it be that, and they say, well, it's only Staten Island. How do we know it's not the other boroughs? The quality of service, even in the New York City subway, is awful. Besides the crime situation, service is awful. It used to be points where buses were on top of each other practically at certain points. People got around. Now you're dealing with buses that are crowded to the point where they're all the way into the doorways. That's not good. That's not safe. That's not safe at all. And people trying to push into it, it causes arguments, fights. And I've seen it before. I've seen it. I've been lucky. Most of my jobs on Sunday were at the beginning of bus lines. So basically, I was already on the bus with a seat before anybody else got on. But by the time I got halfway through there, it's jam-packed. And this happens. You have to see alone the S44 bus line. And like I said, that runs from Staten Island Mall to the Staten Island Ferry. Just in the first 15 stops, it's jam-packed. It does empty out about toward when it gets to Forest Avenue. And then it builds up again. The stop right after Forest Avenue kind of builds up again, because there's a lot of traffic in that area. That's a heavy traffic area. With the app, you could tell if there's another bus behind it. You let that bus go, and you see that the bus behind it is empty, and you say, I'll jump on the empty one. Because people are in a rush to get to places. And they see the bus there, and they have it in their mind, there's no bus behind it. That's in their mind. They say, I'm going to be waiting a long time for the next bus. And see, this is one of the reasons why. So comment below. Let me know your thoughts about this, especially if you're outside New York, you're inside New York. Let me know your thoughts about this. Hit the like, share this video. And hopefully today's the day I've earned your subscription. Hit that button below. Go ahead. Wherever social media platform you're on. Because, here on YouTube, I don't even know if I'm going to be still around in the next couple of weeks. Because the way people are being kicked off YouTube left and right, or demonetized to the situation. So until next time, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the support. We'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye now.